What's going on, guys? Get started here in just a second or two. Let everyone kind of get pinged on their Discord server, and they should be joining in. Um, Great start to the week. I'm a little bit under the weather. My throat's been kind of bothering me. I don't know if it's the flu. I definitely know it's not COVID. That's for sure. But I'm a little bit under the weather. That's why I pretty much wasn't on live today. Just kind of just calling out what I'm looking at in chat. But yeah, my throat's been kind of itchy, and I think I'm starting to get stuffy. So we'll see what happens. But we pretty much had a beautiful meltdown on Friday. I think Bears literally just had their way. They pulled the rug. We got the beautiful landslide. Today, I think Bears wanted to have more blood, but this felt like a very needed type consolidation, a very much needed type of distribution in which you should technically see a leg lower. All right. What I actually basically have drawn up on the screen right now, and this is ES Futes, and I'm looking at roughly on the 30-minute here. I'm basically looking at an ascending broadening wedge. And what this is basically the opposite of what has been my favorite pattern. Those of you that are aware, it's typically the descending broadening wedge in which you typically break north. This one's basically just the reverse. You have the higher highs, you have the higher low, and then you basically saw the rug pull start to happen that we just witnessed into the end of the day here today. So I would anticipate that we likely end up breaking this trend line support at whatever given time here tonight, whether it be by midnight or they continue to chop us up here, and then maybe by early morning hours we end up breaking that support. That's what I would anticipate. That's how the pattern should technically play out. So we've hit our peaks. We had our three peaks. We're about to hit our third bottom, and we should crack right through the support. And basically, what I'm looking at in terms of next level of support will be down at this 39.91 spot, is what I am looking at, in which we should trade to buy tomorrow morning. So that's basically the level that I have my eyes set on, is that 39.91. That's also the level that I do anticipate to pretty much buy the dip, quote unquote, because I do think that we have a bit of a rally that's like going to be coming here at some point mid to late in the week. So I do think that we can find maybe like a nice little pivot close enough or near that 39.91 support I'm watching, and we should be able to take this back over 41.10 is what I'm looking at. So I'm looking at potentially buying a dip at 49.91, and we could take this run up towards 41.18 is what I'm potentially looking at. So that's basically just ultimately looking at my risk reward. That's what I'm going to potentially look at is 39.91. Of course, having my stops in place, and then hopefully looking to see if we can get a strong rally after putting in this bottom, in which we should end up seeing this next strong leg pretty much by tomorrow, I would anticipate, as this distribution is likely going to play out overnight. All right. So that's pretty much just my bottom line. I was basically talking about this morning. I think the first chart that I actually dropped this morning was looking to pretty much get a break over 40.37, and then we would start to see what I would consider my sell zone this morning was that 40.49 up to 40.60 is what I was looking at on ES to pretty much be our sell zone. And as you see, we basically wicked over 40.60, and we were not able to basically hold over that upper trend resistance, and we started to fade. We got that little chop, we retested it, we weren't able to break through yet again, and we saw the dump right under that 50-day EMA here on the 30-minute under that 40.51 spot. So that was basically the zone, and that was just having my supply zone set for the day. So I knew where we needed to get follow through, and obviously that was not the case. But like I said, I'm gonna look for 39.91. Look to reclaim what is actually supposed to be support right now, 40.18, and that's actually active support for most of the morning here today. So 40.18 needs to be reclaimed. Then we're gonna look at 40.51. Next level is gonna be 40.81, and then my PT is still 41.18, like I mentioned. All right. So that's just giving you level by level. All right. A few names that are pretty much on watch. I think Amazon's one that I was pretty much particularly watching. I'm gonna continue to watch Amazon, and I think the bigger picture is more so probably off of the daily here. If you look at the daily, some relatively low volume. You are in the middle of a nice gap fill here. You hit right off of support here, right around that 128.67 spot from this morning. So you basically saw you had the nice little bounce off of that pretty convincingly this morning, faded it, and it kind of consolidated for most of the day. So I am gonna look to pretty much look to see if we end up taking out the support tomorrow. Looking to take it back right under that 128.67, and I'm gonna watch for further continuation into this gap fill that we're currently sitting, which doesn't necessarily complete here until 118.08. So quite a downside. I think that's roughly about a $9 downside. Some meaningful support that I would say is pretty much sitting right around this 125 half. So that's roughly what I'm looking at, which would be about a $4 move to the downside tomorrow on Amazon. And this is one that I took a very small position on this. And I mean very small because mostly because I'm sick right now. I took a small position on it. We'll see how it plays out tomorrow. Again, I'll look for the break under 128.67 here, and we should be able to trade this down towards the 128 half, at least if not towards the entire gap fill, if the broader market does sell off very intensively. All right. Otherwise, this would likely invalidate if we're able to reclaim over 130.67, and then I do have basically, I want to say a hard stop for that matter would be 133.41 would be my hard stop on this. All right. So that's pretty much Amazon. Outside of that, I was also looking at another name that kind of caught my attention off of my scanner. That was looking at Starbucks. This is one that kind of, you want to say, it kind of showed a little bit of relative strength for most of the day, if not pretty much all the day. As you see, it basically closed green, but you had a nice head and shoulder setting up on this one on the hourly. That was a beautiful breakdown that you had. And today, that relative strength that you want to say it looked like, that was basically retesting the neckline. And we should end up seeing this one start to pretty much fall below this low volume node, uh, down at this 83 half spot. And this potentially should make its way down towards another gap that we have sitting down here, is what I'm looking at. So that's roughly right around 81, probably tap 80 half into that gap fill below, which is basically about a $4 move to the downside potentially, is what we're looking at on this one. So I do like Starbucks puts here. This is another one. I took a very small, minor position on this one to the downside. We'll see how it plays out. Of course, looking for a breakdown below the 83 half here. We get the break below 83 half, then you're pretty much targeting that gap fill right at that 81 spot. All right. Otherwise, if we really start to reclaim over 84.95, that's when you're going to be troubling. And then, of course, hard stop is going to be 85.71 on this. All right. Vera, you were talking about UNH, United Healthcare. I'll take a peep for you. Let's see what we got. So I will say right off the bat, and I do think my trend line is actually crooked. Why is it crooked? Or maybe it's actually moved. All right, so you kind of stopped right near where you got a retest. I know that UNH has been one where I think everyone's been trying to short this for quite a while. I know that it's been holding, but obviously you can clearly define that down the upper trend resistance, or right now that was prior support. You got the nice retest off of it so far. Of course, you faded right into the close of the day, so I would anticipate you shouldn't go up as high as 524 here, 534 would be your high end of this retesting if it actually hits exactly to the resistance. Otherwise, this should start to fade here. You're looking for a confirmational breakdown under 527 half. That would be your confirmational breakdown, as it's likely going to end up trending right into this gap fill for completion of it. As you saw, it basically wicked the gap fill below before, off of this little rally we had. We should see it continue to break down and complete that gap fill down towards 121 half. So I would look for this one again. Confirmation though is under one. If it's under 524, under 524, then that takes you right down to 521 half is what I'm looking at. All right. So that's a beautiful one. I like this one for a short. You had a beautiful entry if you hopefully got in somewhere near towards the high of the day here on this one today. But that was a beautiful breakdown, beautiful retest, kind of similar to how the bearish pattern played out on Starbucks. You had the breakdown. Today was a lot of retest for a lot of different names off of that breakdown. And now you should see that next leg to the downside. All right. Let me take a look at the other one you mentioned. You mentioned EMPH. Let's take a look at it. EMPH, this is a hell of a consolidation off EMPH. I want to say that this is more so looking like a channel just going sideways right now. You can basically see I have a little bit of a demand zone that I have sitting here right now. That demand pretty much is right between 276 to 277 is what I'm looking at. You also do have your 200 EMA support sitting here at this 273 half spot is what I'm watching. But I think right now I would say this is more so of a little bit more of a no trade zone for me right now. And the only reason I say that is because two things can basically happen here. You can potentially see an inverted head and shoulders, and I'll kind of just draw it out so you kind of just get the visual picture of what I'm looking at. I'll change the color, by the way, once I finish drawing it out. But you could potentially see this inverted head and shoulders. I'll put it in neon green. Maybe the neon green is a little bit of a bad color. Maybe orange. All right, so hopefully you can see that, but you could potentially see an inverted head and shoulders play out here, and that would be the tough part. If it were able to basically claim over 294, I think that would be a spot where I would say comfortably to maybe go long over 294, and then you risk this right around that 293 spot is what you risk as a stop loss. So 294 would basically be my breakout point in which you're likely going to end up seeing an inverted head and shoulders play out. Otherwise, if you're trying to get the short opportunity, I would wait to particularly see if this ends up starting to fold here. Under 281 would be the spot that I would say to pretty much go for a breakdown, because I think that your risk reward being in the middle of this, of potentially paying out as an inverted head and shoulders, versus potentially going down to the base of this little channel action you have going on, is pretty much you're like smack dead in the middle, in which you don't know the potential directional move. All right, so that's what I would particularly say there. But a very tough spot right now. Um, Johnny, what's going on, my guy? Brian, you said BBBY. I think this is a squeeze ticker, if I'm not mistaken. I will say it actually looks a little bit interesting. I did not actually think that it was actually doing so well at the time being right now. Quite the move. Obviously, I think the biggest thing that you probably see here right off the bat is basically identifying the fact that you're in a major gap fill here right now. So that gap does not complete up until basically 18 half. So $18 and roughly around 40 cents is where that gap fill is going to be completed. Of course, now support wise, and this is pretty much where when you're playing with squeezes, you have to go to the drastic ends. I'm not gonna go within and say cents, but your hard level of support, and you have to have a stomach for a lot of these squeeze plays. But my floor for this will be right around that $12 mark. So 11.98 is what I'm looking at for your floor. That's as low as you could pretty much trade for this to pretty much still be valid as as a resting support for the next leg higher. Otherwise, for breakout wise, you're basically looking to pretty much take this next leg higher. Over 14 half is where I'm going to say you're likely going to take out this wick high from August 29th. That was this morning, rather, and then you should see continuation into the gap fill further up towards that 18 half. All right. So that's basically my bottom line. Over the 14 half, you see continuation towards gap fill at 18 half. Otherwise, hard level support, you're watching this down to $12, and that's where you're gonna look to pretty much buy off of support with a tight stop loss. All right. Herbie, you also mentioned Baba. Let's take a peep. Let's see. Baba's actually coming into some pretty decent support here. 96.26 or 96.36 is where I would say she has support. The only tough part about this is that you do have this gap fill that is not very pleasant. If it does break under that 96.36, that's not a pretty gap fill that you want to be a part of. So that's the tough part about this. Now I will say that I do think you have a little bit more room below that 96.36 though, that you could find some decent support. And I would say that's roughly right around this 95.71 is what I'm looking at for Baba here off of support. So if we're going to see the market start to show some more weakness tomorrow morning, I'm inclined to say that you're likely going to end up seeing a little bit more of some morning red action here on Baba before you likely get a meaningful reversal. So if 95.71 can hold, I think that's where you look for the dip buy entry, and you're risking pretty much your gap fill. Otherwise, if you do get a break below the gap fill here, entering that basically under 94.95, that's when you pretty much look to go short, at least towards filling the gap, and then you wait to see the potential reversal start to take place. All right. You're shorting potentially. I can't blame you. Pretty much trying to short Baba here necessarily. I know China stocks are pretty much tough right now. I think there's been some pretty positive sentiment from over the weekend. It's just that the broader market's pretty much fading it, and that's the reason why you saw it roll over. But it does seem like there's good sentiment coming out of China with, I guess, they're fixing whatever regulations that the U.S. wanted to have over China, and the stocks and reaching agreements and all that. So it's pretty much a solid sentiment, but market wise, it's just being dragged down with the broader market. So I will say pretty much again, just watch that gap fill, and I would hate for you to pretty much end up getting stuck with support at that gap fill. So that's where you really more so want to see the rollover. Otherwise, look to take your profits once you test that gap fill. All right. Other than that, I think that's pretty much we'll call it a day right there. I have not been feeling so well, so that's why again, those of you that were expecting me on live, sorry I was not on live. My throat congestion right now is starting to kill me. So we'll see how I feel tomorrow. We'll see what's going on, and then hopefully tomorrow's gonna be a better day with the market because today felt a little bit choppy. Even though we had a nice little incline to the upside, it was more so a very choppy and whiplash kind of morning, especially. So we'll see what tomorrow brings if we get some better fluidity out of this market. But other than that, I will leave it as is. And I appreciate you guys joining as always. And you guys have a great evening. All right, later, guys.